Everyone judged me for ignoring my wife until they knew what she did. At my kids' school night, my wife kept trying to smile and talk to me like everything was normal. I barely responded. People stared like I was cruel. What they didn't know was I'd just found a document with my name on it, tied to a debt I never agreed to. So I stayed silent, called a lawyer, and started saving receipts. My name is Daniel. I'm 36, and I live outside Minneapolis. I work in operations for a medical supply company. Nothing glamorous, but steady. My wife, Brianna, is 34. She's social, polished, the kind of person who can make a stranger feel like an old friend in 5 minutes. People like her quickly. That matters. We have 2 kids. Leo is 9, Ava is 6. School events are a big deal in our neighborhood. If you show up, you're involved. If you don't, people notice. This story starts on a Tuesday night at Leo's school. It was one of those open house nights where kids show you their classroom projects and parents pretend they understand new math. Brianna arrived wearing a nice coat and that calm smile she uses when she wants everything to look normal. She walked up to me by the hallway bulletin board and said, "Hey babe," like we'd had a normal day. I nodded. That's it. She touched my arm lightly, like she was guiding me back into the role of happy husband. I stepped half an inch away. Not dramatic, just clear. Her smile flickered for a second, then returned. People noticed. My sister Megan was there too, because she's one of those super involved aunts. She walked up to me and whispered, "What is your problem tonight?" I didn't answer her either. I just said, "Not here." If you're thinking I'm rude, I understand. It looked rude. It looked like I was punishing my wife in public. But here's what had happened 8 hours earlier. That morning, I opened our mailbox and saw an envelope from our bank. Not an ad. Not a statement. A formal letter. Inside was a notice about an updated lending agreement and an added responsible party. My name was on it. I read it 3 times because my brain refused to accept it. The letter said our home equity line had been increased. The balance was higher than what I remembered. And the updated documents were dated last week. I never signed anything last week. I called the bank immediately. The rep sounded calm, professional. "Sir, it looks like the change was requested in person, with identification." I said, "I did not go in person. I did not request this." The rep paused, then said, "Do you have joint account holders?" I said, "My wife." He said, "Okay. I recommend you come into a branch today, and I recommend you do not discuss this with anyone until you secure records." That sentence is why I didn't talk at the school event. Because once you accuse someone without proof, the story becomes about your accusation, not their action. And Brianna was better at stories than I was. Back at the school, Brianna leaned toward me and whispered, "Can you stop acting weird?" I looked at her and said quietly, "Later." She smiled at a teacher, then whispered again, "You're embarrassing me." I thought, "You embarrassed us when you touched our finances without telling me." But I didn't say that. Not here. Not in a hallway filled with kids and staff. We walked into Leo's classroom. Leo ran over with his project, excited. "Dad, look," he said, holding up a poster board. I smiled at him like my life wasn't splitting in half internally. Brianna leaned in beside Leo and said, loud enough for other parents to hear, "Daddy's just tired. He's been stressed." Stressed. That was her first move. Label me. A mom across the room gave me a sympathetic look like I was the problem. My sister Megan shot me a look that said, "Fix your attitude." If you were me, what would you do right then? Because you can either defend yourself or protect your kids' night. I chose the kids. I smiled, asked Leo questions about his project, and gave Brianna nothing to argue with. We left the classroom, and in the hallway, Megan grabbed my sleeve. "Daniel," she said, "Brianna is crying in the bathroom. People are talking." I looked at Megan and said, "Calm, let them." Megan blinked. What did she do? I paused. I didn't want to say it in a school hallway. So I said, "I'll tell you later, not here." Megan frowned. "This better not be you being petty." I said, "It's not." Then Brianna came out of the bathroom with dry eyes. That's how good she is. She can cry and then reset her face like a switch. She walked up, smiled at Megan and said, "He's just overwhelmed." And Megan, my own sister, nodded like that made sense. We drove home in silence. In the driveway, Brianna turned to me and said, "Are you done with your little stunt?" I finally looked at her. I said, "I'm going to the bank tomorrow. You're coming too." Her smile faded. "Why?" I said, Because our home equity account was changed, and I didn't authorize it. Brianna's eyes widened just a fraction. Then she did what I should have expected. She laughed. That's ridiculous, she said. You always think I'm doing something. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I walked inside, opened my laptop, and created a folder called Receipts. I uploaded the bank letter scan. I wrote the date and time of my call. I saved everything. Then I called a lawyer. Not to destroy anyone. To understand the safest next step. And Miss Grant told me one thing that shaped the rest of this story. Do not confront without documents, she said, and do not argue in person. Keep communication clear and recorded, because people who manipulate rely on confusion. That night, Brianna texted me from the bedroom while I sat on the couch. Are we really doing this? You're scaring me. I stared at the message. Then I saw Leo walk into the hallway and look at me, worried. He whispered, Did I do something? I swallowed hard and said, No, buddy, you did nothing. And I realized the real cost of this wasn't my reputation. It was my kids' sense of safety. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with coffee I couldn't taste, staring at that scanned signature page. It looked close enough to fool someone at a glance. But I knew my own signature. This wasn't it. I didn't wake Brianna up. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I took screenshots, saved the PDF, and put it in Receipts. Then I did the first adult thing that actually matters in situations like this. I froze my credit. It took 20 minutes, and it felt surreal, like I was role-playing as someone in a true crime documentary. Then I went to the bank. In person, with ID, calm face, and a list of questions. The branch manager, Mr. Collins, brought me into a small office. I slid the letter across the desk and said, I did not authorize this. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, let me pull the file. As he clicked through screens, he said, This was requested by an in-person visit. I asked, Who is the person? He looked up. I can't disclose private customer details if it's a joint account, but I can tell you the documents show both signatures. I said, One of those signatures is not mine. Mr. Collins paused. Then we treat this as a dispute. We review ID verification logs. We request the original paperwork. And you should speak with counsel. I nodded. I already did. He gave me a look of respect, like he didn't expect me to be that prepared. Then he said, There's one more thing. Those words always mean your day is about to get worse. He turned his screen slightly and showed me the transaction list. Multiple transfers had been made from the line of credit into another account. Small at first, then bigger. I asked, Where did it go? He said, An external account ending in 8,821. I recognized the last 4 digits. It was Brianna's brother's account, Chase. My hands went cold. So it wasn't just updating paperwork. It was moving money. I asked, When did the transfers start? Mr. Collins read the dates. The first transfer happened the same week. Chase posted online about new beginnings and a big opportunity. I'd seen it and ignored it. Now it had a price tag. If you're thinking, confront Brianna right now, I get it. But Miss Grant's advice was in my head. Paper first. So I asked the bank for printed records, and I asked them to note, in writing, that I disputed the signature. Mr. Collins printed everything. He also gave me one sentence I won't forget. Sir, if you suspect unauthorized signatures, do not discuss the details with the person you suspect until you've secured all records. On the drive home, I called Miss Grant. She asked, Do you have children? Yes, I said. She said, Then we keep everything calm and structured. Your priority is stability. Also, do not leave the home without a plan. Document. Communicate in writing. When I got home, Brianna was in the kitchen, making breakfast like nothing happened. She smiled brightly. Hey, you're back early. I looked at her and said, Calm. We need to talk tonight. After the kids are asleep. Brianna's smile tightened. About what? I didn't answer. I just said, Tonight. Brianna tried to pull me into an argument immediately. Are you punishing me? She said. Is this because I asked you to help more? Help more. She was already rewriting the conflict into something normal. I said, Calm, tonight. That afternoon, she texted my sister Megan. Megan called me. What did you do? Megan asked. Brianna says you're emotionally shutting her out. I exhaled slowly. Megan, I'm not discussing it by phone. Come over tonight. Megan said, Why? I said, Because you'll understand when you see documents. Megan went quiet, then said, Okay. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the table with 3 printed pages. Page 1, the signature dispute. Page 2, the transfer history. Page 3, the destination account ending in Chase's digits. Brianna walked in, saw the papers, and froze. Her voice got small. Why is that printed? I said, calm, because this is our money, and this is my name. Megan arrived and sat down, eyes wide. Brianna tried to smile. This is weird. I looked at her and said, Whose signature is that? Brianna blinked fast. It's yours. I asked, Do you want to say that again, slowly? She swallowed. Daniel, you're overreacting. I didn't raise my voice. I slid the transfer page toward Megan. Megan's eyes scanned, then widened. That went to Chase, Megan said quietly. Brianna snapped. He needed help. Megan looked at her. With what? Brianna hesitated. Then she said, A business thing. It's temporary. He'll pay it back. I asked one question, calm. Did you sign my name? Brianna's eyes filled instantly. Tears, her strongest tool. I was desperate, she whispered. You never helped my family. Megan stared at her like she didn't recognize her. I said, Answer the question. Brianna looked down and said, I didn't think it mattered. We're married. That sentence was the moment my marriage ended internally. Because marriage is not permission to use someone's identity. Megan whispered, Brianna, what are you doing? Brianna looked up, angry through tears. I'm fixing things. Daniel is always rules and boundaries. I needed action. I stayed calm. You needed consent. Brianna wiped her face and went cold. You're going to ruin my brother. I looked at her. You did that. Megan stood up slowly. I'm sorry, Daniel. I thought you were being mean. I nodded. That's why I stayed quiet. Brianna pointed at me. You ignored me at school to punish me. I replied, calm. No. I ignored you at school because I wasn't giving you a scene to weaponize. Brianna's face tightened. So what, you're going to leave me? I said, I'm going to protect our kids and our finances. Then I told her the next boundary. From this point on, we communicate in writing. No verbal fights, and you are not to move money, change accounts, or contact the school. Brianna laughed bitterly. You can't control me. I replied, calm. Watch me. The school portal update was the moment I understood something clearly. Brianna wasn't just hiding a financial decision. She was restructuring access. Access to our kids. Access to narratives. Access to what people would believe. I called the school first thing in the morning. Calm, polite voice. Hi, this is Daniel. I'm the father of Leo and Ava. I need to confirm emergency contacts and pickup authorization. The front office sounded professional. We have you listed, she said, but there was an update last night. I did not authorize any removal, I said. We can't change it without both parents present, she said, but we can add a note and require in-person verification. I drove to the school and brought ID. I asked them to lock the file so changes required both parents in person. Then I did the second boring adult thing. I set up a parenting communication app, the kind court systems recommend, and I asked Brianna to use it. She refused. She texted instead. You're trying to take my kids. I screenshot it. Then she texted again. I told the school you've been unstable. Unstable. There it was again. Label him, then move pieces around him. I didn't respond emotionally. I forwarded the text to Miss Grant. Miss Grant replied, Good, keep everything. Also, we file for temporary orders. Temporary orders aren't dramatic. They're guardrails. We filed. No changes to school contacts without mutual consent. No third-party pickups. Financial restraining order on shared accounts until review. Communication in writing only. Brianna found out and did exactly what I expected. She went public socially. Not online, but socially. She called my mom. She called Megan. She called our friends. I started getting texts. Are you okay? Brianna says you're shutting her out. Brianna says you're punishing her. At a neighborhood block party that weekend, Brianna showed up with the kids. Smiling, polished. She walked up to me and said loudly, Can you please talk to me like an adult? People turned. This was what she wanted, an audience. If you were me, would you defend yourself in front of everyone? Because that's the temptation. I didn't. I said, Calm, please message me through the app. Brianna scoffed and said, "See, he's doing it again. He's ignoring me." A neighbor gave me a look like I was cruel. I turned to the grill and kept flipping burgers. Not because I didn't care, because I refused to participate in her theater. That night, Brianna texted me, angry. "You think you're so smart. Everyone sees what you are." I screenshot it. 2 days later, HR at my job asked me to come in for a check-in. My stomach dropped. In the office, my HR rep said, "Daniel, we received a concerning email from an external address. It claims you're under stress and shouldn't be operating equipment." I stared at her. From who? She didn't say a name, but she slid the email across. The sender used a name that looked like my wife's brother's nickname, Chase. So now the money was tied to my name, and my work stability was being attacked too. I didn't panic. I did what I'd been doing. I documented. I told HR, calm. This is part of a personal dispute. I can provide legal documentation. I am fit for duty. HR nodded. We just needed to note it. That was the point. Not to get me fired. To create a record. Brianna wanted an official-looking trail where I was unstable. So I built my own trail. Receipts. Bank records. School portal logs. Texts. HR email. Then, on Thursday, Brianna made a mistake. She texted me, "If you drop the lawyer stuff, Chase will return the money." She wrote it like a negotiation. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I did wrong." Just a trade. I screenshot it and forwarded it to Miss Grant. Miss Grant replied, "That's an admission that money left and can be returned. Good." The temporary hearing was set for the following week. At the courthouse, Brianna arrived dressed like a victim, eyes glossy, holding tissues. She told the judge, calmly, that I was emotionally unavailable and shutting her out. Then Miss Grant stood and said, "Your Honor, this is not about emotions. This is about unauthorized financial actions and attempted changes to child contact records." The judge looked at Brianna and asked, "Did you sign your husband's name?" Brianna hesitated. Then she said, "I don't know what he's talking about." Miss Grant handed over the bank's ID verification note and the signature dispute. Brianna's face changed. Then she tried to cry. The judge didn't react to tears. She reacted to records. Temporary orders were granted. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. Because now my kid's safety file wasn't a weapon. And my finances weren't a free-for-all. Outside the courthouse, Brianna hissed, "You're ruining me." I replied, calm, "You ruined trust." Then she said the sentence that explained why everyone had judged me for ignoring her. "People like you always win," she said, "because you look calm." I stared at her. I said, "I am calm, because I'm protecting our children." After Megan told me that, I felt sick, not angry. Because control of a school file sounds small to people without kids. But to a parent, it's a safety system. And Brianna had tried to weaponize it. My mom invited us all to a family meeting. I almost didn't go, but I knew my mom was hearing Brianna's story without my documents. So I said yes with one condition. Megan would be there and I would bring paperwork. When I walked into my mom's living room, Brianna was already on the couch holding Ava like a shield. Leo sat beside her, quiet. My mom looked at me and said, "Why are you being so cold?" There it was, the judgment. I didn't argue. I didn't defend my character. I asked, calm, "Can I speak for 5 minutes without interruption?" My mom hesitated, then nodded. I placed my folder on the coffee table. Inside were the bank letter, the transaction history to Chase's account, the school portal change log, Brianna's text about returning money if I dropped lawyer stuff, the temporary order summary. My mom stared at the papers. Brianna said, "This is so dramatic." Megan snapped, "Stop." Brianna's head turned sharply. "Excuse me." Megan said, "You changed the school contacts on purpose." The room went quiet. Brianna's eyes widened. "Megan, don't." My mom looked between them. "What are you talking about?" Megan took a breath and said, "She told me if I control the school file, I control the kids." My mom's face drained of color. My dad, who had been quiet in the corner, finally said, "Brianna, did you say that?" Brianna tried to cry again. I was stressed. My mom whispered, "Answer." Brianna's silence was the answer. Then I spoke, calm. "This is why I didn't argue at school night. This is why I didn't fight in public, because she wanted an audience and a story where I looked unstable." My mom's eyes filled. But why would she do this? I slid the transaction page forward. Because money was moved to Chase. Brianna snapped. He needed help. My dad said, with what? Brianna hesitated. It doesn't matter. I said calm. It does, because my name was used. My mom looked at the papers again, then at Brianna. Did you sign his name? She asked quietly. Brianna whispered, we're married. My mom said, that's not an answer. Brianna's voice rose. I did what I had to do. And that sentence right there changed the room. Because suddenly everyone could hear it. Not, I made a mistake. Not, I'm sorry. I did what I had to do. My mom looked at me, eyes wet. Daniel, I'm sorry. I nodded. Thank you. Brianna stood up, furious. So, you're all against me now. Megan said, no, we're against the behavior. Brianna grabbed her purse and said, fine. He can have his cold little life. She walked out. Leo looked at me like he didn't know what to do with his face. I knelt and said, hey buddy, you're safe. This is adult stuff. Leo nodded slowly. That was the moment the judgment ended. Not because people suddenly loved me, because the story had evidence now. Over the next week, relatives who had been cold to me started texting. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Brianna told us you were ignoring her to punish her. I replied politely, short. It's okay. I understand why it looked that way. Because it did look that way. But here's what I wish people understood. Sometimes ignoring is not cruelty. Sometimes it's self-defense. Brianna tried one last move. She asked for a fresh start dinner, just the two of us, no lawyers. I said no, in writing. She replied, you're scared to face me. I didn't respond. Then she texted, if you don't stop, I'll make sure everyone knows what you're really like. I screenshot it and sent it to Miss Grant. Miss Grant replied, good, we keep building the record. The bank eventually completed its review. They confirmed the signature was disputed and required new verification procedures moving forward. Chase's account was flagged as the destination for transfers, and my attorney pushed for repayment arrangements. It wasn't instant. Real life doesn't move fast, but it moved. And Brianna's public sympathy started shrinking, because sympathy doesn't survive documented patterns. When Chase emailed that, I didn't respond emotionally. I forwarded it to Miss Grant. Then I did something I never thought I'd do in my marriage. I accepted that this wasn't fixable with a conversation. Brianna hadn't made one mistake. She had built a system where my voice didn't matter unless it was in writing. So we moved forward with separation and structured co-parenting. The court process was boring, slow, and expensive. But it did one thing that mattered. It replaced chaos with rules. Rules about school access. Rules about financial responsibility. Rules about communication. Brianna hated rules when she wasn't the one setting them. In mediation, she tried to pivot again. She said, Daniel emotionally abandoned me. Miss Grant responded, calm. We're not mediating feelings. We're mediating actions and stability for children. That was the theme of my whole year. Stop arguing feelings. Secure stability. Chase eventually signed a repayment agreement. Not perfect, not full, but structured. My credit stayed frozen until everything settled. I changed every password, every recovery email, every shared login we'd ever had. And my kids adjusted faster than I expected once the adults stopped pulling them into tension. Leo stopped asking whether I was mad at mom. Ava stopped checking my face when the phone buzzed. That's what kids do when they feel safe. They go back to being kids. Brianna and I didn't become friends, but we became something better for the children. Predictable. Drop-offs on time. School forms clean. No surprise, third-party helpers. My sister Megan told me something a few months later. She said, I'm sorry I judged you. The ignoring made you look heartless. I nodded. I know. Then I said, I wasn't ignoring her because I didn't care. I was ignoring her because every reaction was being used as proof that I was the problem. Megan swallowed. That's terrifying. It was. And that's why the lesson of this story isn't be cold. It's be clear. If you're listening and you've ever been judged for going quiet, here's what I learned. You don't owe the world a performance while you're protecting your life. You owe your kids stability. You owe yourself documentation. And the people who truly care will understand once the facts exist. Final update. My mom apologized again later, this time better. Not, I'm sorry you felt. Not, I'm sorry it got messy. She said, I'm sorry I believed the easier story. That sentence mattered. Because the easier story was that I was cruel. The harder story was that Brianna had been reckless. People choose easy stories until the receipts make them uncomfortable. I didn't get a cinematic win. I got something more useful. A safe routine. A protected financial life. And kids who aren't learning that manipulation is normal. So yes, everyone judged me for ignoring my wife. Until they knew what she did. And once they knew, the judgment didn't matter anymore. Because my silence wasn't cruelty. It was a strategy. One last thing. If you ever look cold because you're refusing to argue in public, remember this. Calm is not guilt. Sometimes calm is protection. If you like calm, documentary-style stories with receipts and a clear payoff, subscribe. I post long-form stories like this regularly, and the next story starts with a harmless update that turns into a paper trail.